Hello, I am going to read for you. This is a story by O.Henry, born William Sidney Porter. And the story we will be reading is a short story, and it is in the Western genre. The title is The Reformation of Calliope. I will read you the foreword that is included here. Many of O.Henry, William Sidney Porter's delightful, quote, surprises, end quote, have Western settings. His collection, Heart of the West, 1904, contains 19 of the finest of these stories, many dealing with a variety of unusual characters that are mischievous to one another to one degree or another. Calliope Catesby, the hero of the Reformation of Calliope, is of this ilk. A man who, when, quote, in his humors, end quote, had been known to wreak havoc in the town of Quicksand. What happens to the, quote, terror of quicksand, end quote, is O.Henry at his ironic best. Calliope Catesby was in his humors again. Ennui was upon him. This goodly promontory, the earth, particularly that portion of it known as quicksand, was to him no more than a pestilent congregation of vapors. Overtaken by the megrims, the philosopher may seek relief in soliloquy. My lady finds solace in tears. The flaccid Easterner scolds at the millinery bills of his womenfolk. Such recourse was insufficient to the denizens of Quicksand. Calliope, especially, was wont to express his ennui according to his lights. Overnight, Calliope had hung out signals of approaching low spirits. He had kicked his own dog on the porch of the Occidental Hotel, and refused to apologize. He had become capricious and fault-finding in conversation. While strolling about, he reached often for twigs of mesquite and chewed the leaves fiercely. That was always an ominous act. Another symptom alarming to those who were familiar with the different stages of his doldrums was his increasing politeness and a tendency to use formal phrases. A husky softness succeeded the usual penetrating drawl in his tones. A dangerous courtesy marked his manners. Later, his smile became crooked, the left side of his mouth slanting upward, and Quicksand got ready to stand from under. At this stage, Calliope generally began to drink. Finally, about midnight, he was seen going homeward, saluting those whom he met with exaggerated but inoffensive courtesy. Not yet was Calliope's melancholy at the danger point. He would seat himself at the window of the room he occupied over Sylvester's tonsorial parlors, and there chant lugubrious and tuneless ballads until morning, accompanying the noises by appropriate maltreatment of a jingling guitar. More magnanimous than Nero, he would thus give musical warning of the forthcoming municipal upheaval that Quicksand was scheduled to endure. A quiet, amiable man was Calliope Catesby at other times. Quiet to indolence and amiable to worthlessness. At best, he was a loafer and a nuisance. At worst, he was the terror of Quicksand. His ostensible occupation was something subordinate in the real estate line. He drove the beguiled Easterner in buckboards out to look over lots and ranch property. Originally, he came from one of the Gulf states, his lank 6 feet, slurring rhythm of speech, and sectional idioms giving evidence of his birthplace. And yet, after taking on Western adjustments, this languid pine box whittler, cracker barrel hugger, shady cornered lounger of the cotton fields and sumac hills of the South, became famed as a bad man among men who had made a lifelong study of the art of truculence. A bad man. At 9 the next morning, Calliope was fit, inspired by his own barbarous melodies and the contents of his jug. He was ready primed to gather fresh laurels from the diffident brow of quicksand. Encircled and crisscrossed with cartridge belts, abundantly garnished with revolvers and copiously drunk, he poured forth into Quicksand's main street. Too chivalrous to surprise and capture a town by silent sortie, he paused at the nearest corner and emitted his slogan, that fearful brassy yell, so reminiscent of the steam piano that had gained for him the classic appellation that had superseded his own baptismal name. Following close upon his vociferation came 3 shots from his .45 by way of limbering up the guns and testing his aim. A yellow dog, the personal property of Colonel Swayze, the proprietor of the Occidental, fell feet upward in the dust with one farewell yelp. A Mexican who was crossing the street from the Blue Front grocery, carrying in his hand a bottle of kerosene, was stimulated to a sudden and admirable burst of speed, still grasping the neck of the shattered bottle. The new gilt weathercock on Judge Riley's lemon and ultramarine 2-story residence shivered, flapped, and hung by a splinter, the sport of the wanton breezes. The artillery was in trim. Calliope's hand was steady. The high, calm ecstasy of habitual battle was upon him, though slightly embittered by the sadness of Alexander, in that his conquests were limited to the small world of Quicksand. Down the street went Calliope, shooting right and left. Glass fell like hail. Dogs vamoosed. Chickens flew squawking. Feminine voices shrieked concernedly to youngsters at large. The din was perforated at intervals by the staccato of the Terror's guns, and was drowned periodically by the brazen speech that Quicksand knew so well. The occasions of Calliope's low spirits were legal holidays in Quicksand. All along the main street, in advance of his coming, clerks were putting up shutters and closing doors. Business would languish for a space. The right-of-way was Calliope's, and as he advanced, observing the dearth of opposition and the few opportunities for distraction, his ennui perceptibly increased.